Hi, I'm Larry Puckett. So what follows is the second video in this review of NixTrainz Power Bridge Stay Alive devices. Now in this one I will take you through installation, and then that will be followed by a test drive of the completed locomotive on the module that I've been showing you over the last few weeks and even months. So let's go ahead and get started with the installation of the Power Bridge 3 in the small Walthers SW1 switcher. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Okay, well, nothing ever goes the way you really planned for it to. So this was the small switcher that I used for the demo, and this right here is the decoder, this tiny little thing right here. And unfortunately, it does not have a separate set of wires for attaching a Stay Alive. So I'm going to pass on doing the job on this guy here because there is no way that I'm going to be able to solder anything to this little circuit board here. It's just too small even for me. So what I'm going to do is, instead, this is the companion locomotive that it's very similar to this one. It's made by Walthers, but it's a later release. And in this particular case, it uses a different motor, and it's got dual flywheels where the other one has a single. So it's just a little bit different, but I used to run these coupled together with what I call my poor man's keep alive, because they both suffer from the same pickup issues. So this one is just as good a choice to use the new Power Bridge 3 on. And you can see this is the Power Bridge 3 here, and this is a capacitor that I attached to SoundTraxx Eco 100 decoder in here, and you can see it's going to fit in here right nice. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is we're going to put the Power Bridge 3 in this locomotive here, and then we'll be able to give it a test drive on the railroad. So let's begin by putting this together, because it is something of a little kit that you've got to do. Okay, so these are the instructions basically that come with the Power Bridge 3 for wiring the capacitors up. So you have a black and a brown wire on one end of the circuit board and a red and a black on the other. So this black wire goes out and is connected to the negative contact or negative lead here on the capacitor. And you can tell it's negative because you can see this white stripe along the side. And I'll show you that on the capacitor itself. Well, that white stripe indicates negative. And then the other leg or the other lead is positive, and that goes to the negative on the next capacitor. And then the brown wire is attached to the positive contact on this one and is connected to the circuit board. So let's go ahead and put this part together right now. And for that, I've got them laid out here right before you. And if you look right here on the side of this little capacitor, there's this white stripe, and there's a little negative mark on it, okay, a little dash line. And that indicates this is the negative lead right here. And that's the shorter of the two. That's negative, that's positive. Okay, let's get started with the kit building here. I've taken this negative lead here and bent it sideways, and the positive here. So we're going to be connecting the positive, this one, to the negative here. And for that, I'm going to bring these two guys right together like that, as close as I can get them, and hold them like that, and pull them over like this, because we want them to be soldered together as close as they can be. And I've got my piece of solder right there, and my soldering iron, so we'll get that going, and make sure these guys are touching one another. We want those wires touching each other there. And then I'm just going to hit it with some solder just like that. And it's getting warm, so I'm going to pick that off. I'm going to let that cool a second, and then we'll give it a test and make sure that it's together quite firmly. Okay, that's good. Now let me get my little clippers here, and we're going to clip those wires that we just soldered. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just clip the ones I just soldered together and make sure that I did not solder anything together that I didn't want to, because this is a tight job here. For that, I'm going to hold it this way so I can get to it better. Okay, there's that one, and then that's the other one right there. Matter of fact, I'm going to clip this one a little bit shorter, to be honest with you. It's a little bit too close for my... There we go. Okay, there you go. I think you can see that now. So we've got a positive connected to the negative right there. Okay, so this black wire here, this is the black and the brown wire side. I'm going to take my black wire, and it's going to be connected to this negative leg right here. So I'm going to bring it sort of like that. And so I'm going to clip this guy off about that short, and I'll do the other one while I'm at it, like that. There we go. And this heat shrink tubing is 3/64 of an inch in diameter. So let me clip just a little bit of that. We don't want much. And we're going to do two, one for each side. Okay, there we go. Put that out of the way. And so next I'm going to clip and strip the wires here. So I'm going to cut them first. Right about there. There. Get that out of the way. I'm going to put these together this way, and then I'll fold it over. There we go. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to strip the other one. And these wire strippers are the micro ones that I got from DCC Concepts. There we go. Came right off. Okay, good. So now we've got two exposed wires there. And let's put on the black side. I'm going to twist this a little bit just to keep it from fraying. Then we'll put the heat shrink tubing on first. Get that out of the way down there. Boy, that's a close fit, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put a little solder on these bare wires. Pre-tin them. And then I'm going to do the same thing to these bare exposed wires here on the capacitor. And by the way, you do have to use both of these capacitors in order for this circuit to work. So you can't get by with just using one of them. Okay, this is the negative one right here with that little dab of solder. And we'll see if we can't go ahead and make that connection. Hopefully it'll be real quick and done in just a touch. There. I think that did it. Just like that. Now, let's see if the... I'm afraid the heat shrink tubing shrank during the soldering process. One of the problems. So let me see if I can slide it up over there. Okay, I managed to get the little piece of heat shrink tubing. Let me get it back down to cover the exposed wire. That's good. Now, just going to take my soldering iron and touch that heat shrink tubing and finish shrinking it down. There we go. Now we can do the same thing to the other side here. Bring this guy in closer. And I'll bend this guy out. Okay, so I've got that arranged just the way I want it. And now just a touch of the soldering iron should finish the job. Okay. And let's move that heat shrink into place to where it covers as much of that wire as we can. and we'll shrink it. Okay, so there is the finished product. Once you put those two capacitors together, now what I'll do is just flip it over. Now, of course, this all would be a lot easier if I wasn't trying to bend it into as small a package as I can possibly do it. And there we go. I've got it all wrapped around itself in one very tiny little package. I'll show you how small it is. There's my little finger, and it's sitting on my fingernail there. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'll be taking this small capacitor out here that SoundTraxx originally supplied and putting this guy right here in its place. So it's going to take up just about the same amount of room. So here's what the finished product looks like. You can see the two capacitors are sitting here dangling just above the circuit board. There's a couple of millimeters in there between them and the components. And the reason for that is because Nick has warned me a couple of times that this circuit board does heat up in use. And it gets warm enough so he does not recommend attaching it to any pieces of plastic in the locomotive or to any double-sided foam tape or anything like that you might use to mount it. So what I'm going to do is I cut a piece of phenolic circuit board that I've had laying around here for ages. And you can get this off of eBay and probably Amazon. You can get it from companies like Jameco, Mauser, DigiKey, any place like that that sells electronic stuff. And then I cut this so that it's going to be the same size as the bottom of this circuit board. And then what I'm going to do is tape these two together and hope that insulates it. And then Nick sent me this double-sided 3M strip of tape here. And I will put the information on that in the description for this video. So go there and look it up. And it's a heat-resistant tape. And he has found it to work quite well with mounting these little guys in locomotives. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put this together, and then I'll show you afterwards how it works. Okay, so I thought I'd show you. Here's what I came up with. So this is the circuit board right here. And then this larger, thicker piece is the phenolic board. And then on the bottom, you can see I've got two small strips of this double-sided tape that Nick sent me. So that's what I'll be using. And it will be placed right there. You can see this is where the old capacitor that came with the SoundTraxx decoder is located. And I'm going to pull that off, and we'll put this guy right down here. And where it's not going to be visible hardly at all. And hopefully that piece of phenolic board sitting there between the circuit board and this plastic clip on top of the gear tower here will do the job. So the next step is to remove this capacitor, preserving as much of these wires as I can, and then we will install the new PowerBridge 3 in its place. So now I'm going to take this little guy here, and I'm just going to clip his leads because I don't need this. It's a standard 220 microfarad 25 volt capacitor that SoundTraxx sends out with just about all of their sound decoders, and it's used mainly to provide enough power to keep the sound working over dirty spots, but it doesn't have enough capacity to do anything with respect to keeping the locomotive running. Okay, so I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and try to cut this off because I want to preserve as much of this wire as possible. Okay, let's see if I was able to get that loose now. There, got that off. And you can see these are the two blue wires that there's the function. These are the function common wires, and that's one of the leads we needed to attach to. And let me get this other one off now. Get that in where you can see it. Whoops! I have to do a repair job. I pulled the wire out completely. Well, as you can see here, I have a new, much longer green wire, And that was because when I tugged on the heat shrink tubing, the whole wire slid right out of the decoder. So now I've got to get that fed back in there. And fortunately, it was just a little JST type plug here. So I was able to pull it out and unplug it. Now I've got to reinsert it. So I'll be right back on that. Okay, I've got the circuit board reinstalled at the end of the decoder. And I've got my short wire here, the green and yellow wire. And that's what the folks at SoundTraxx use on their decoders. I'm going to take my heat shrink tubing and insert it over the end of each wire so that I'll be able to protect that solder joint. And then we'll need one up here too. And hopefully I can slide that down far enough over these two wires. So now I have both wires, and I need to strip the end of the green and yellow wires. Let me pull that over here. And I did test this after I replaced it to make sure I had continuity there before I put it back together. Let me grasp this with my little tweezers. This is like microsurgery here. There we go. And let's do some soldering. So I'm just going to prepare this one right here by pre-tinning it. Okay, that's got its solder on it. The next thing I need to do is prepare the wires on the Power Bridge 3 to make this connection. And after a discussion with Nick on the phone this morning, we determined that the black wire here will go to the green and yellow wire coming out of the decoder, and the red wire goes to the blue wire coming out of the decoder. So let me go ahead and snip that. I'm going to make it about that long. So now I've got that done. Let's strip these wires here on the Power Bridge 3. So we don't need much. There we go. Let me get my solder and we will pre-tin these wires. Here we go. So now those are pre-tinned and ready to be attached. Before I do that, I'm going to peel the tape off and install this guy in place so that I don't have him dangling out in the way. Pull those up and we'll put this in its position. Okay, so there you go. That's what the final installation is going to look like. But first, before we can give it a test drive, we have to make these final connections here. And as I said, the red wire goes to the blue wire here. So let's do that one. Actually, I'm going to put the heat shrink tubing on the red wire because it's longer. And we can get it down there. Okay, there's that one. And the black wire, where is he? There he is. He was hiding down in there. I'm going to put the... Now, the red wire goes to the blue wire on the decoder. That one's attached. Now we'll take the black wire and it gets attached to the green and yellow wire on the decoder. So I'll bring this guy over here and then we can so we've made that connection. Hopefully everybody is soldered to the right place. So there I've got my heat shrink tubing in place. Let's shrink it. And because of the composition of this type of heat shrink tubing, I can just touch it with the soldering iron. And unfortunately, this came from All Electronics, who is no longer in business. So you'll have to purchase this stuff from either Jameco or DigiKey or Mauser or somebody on eBay or Amazon, something like that. And I haven't bought any since my friends at All Electronics closed their business, so I can't give you a hint as to the best place to go. So there it is. Now I'm going to get it buttoned up and we'll give it a test drive. Okay, so here is the Locomotive on the track now. We're ready to give it a test drive. It has the SoundTraxx Economy 100 decoder in it. Unfortunately, no longer available, but they have lots of other SoundTraxx decoders that are comparable. And this particular Locomotive now has the Power Bridge 3 Stay Alive in it. So let's see how it goes through the double crossover. And I'm going to run it through that speed step 1. We'll put it on speed step 2. There's no flickering at all in that headlight. So you'd be hard-pressed to get a Locomotive to run any smoother than that. Let's take it down and we'll run it on speed step 1. It's creeping right across those plastic components in the double crossover. By the way, this is a Walthers SW1 switcher. Okay, well, it only took me a couple of hours to do all of that, and that was filming at the same time. So it's not a difficult job. You know, if you've done a little bit of soldering, you should be able to do it without too much problem, unless you're going to try like me and cram it in to the tightest package you can possibly get it. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this look at NixTrainz new Power Bridge Stay Alive devices, as well as the installation that I did for you and the demonstration run of the Locomotive on the layout. I think it did a great job of making that Locomotive perform like it never has before. There wasn't a single hiccup at all when it ran through that double crossover. So feel free to leave your comments and your questions on the installation and on the devices. And have a great weekend, have a great week, and I'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guy. Bye now.